What's up, folks? Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we're back again with another video, this time with some more UFC DFS picks and lineup advice, FanDuel and DraftKings for tonight's UFC Fight Night. And in this 10-minute video, we're going to discuss a couple things: projected ownership, the 5-round main event, some fights that should feature high volume, and then some fights we should probably fade based on our metrics in our Occupy model, which is what you see on screen here. Before we get started, if you like our videos and you want to get notified whenever a new one is released, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate that. Any questions you have about tonight's UFC DFS slate, MMA DFS in general, DFS in general, comment below and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. One more thing before we jump into this video, we are going live on Twitch at 3:30 p.m. Eastern to take your questions live Q&A, and that link is in the description below. Be sure to subscribe over there as well, twitch.tv/OccupyFantasy. Okay, so for this event tonight, let's start by looking at some of the biggest favorites in our Occupy model. Remember, our Occupy model ranks every fighter for both FanDuel and DraftKings. Over 50 different metrics go into it. It's updated live and is free until a major North American team sport returns, which doesn't look like it's anytime soon, to be honest. So, all right, so let's sort by money line in the Occupy model, and we'll see Blaydes, the main event favorite, is the largest favorite on the slate at -435. Frank Camacho, who is fighting a replacement fighter, Justin James, was deemed as the replacement just a couple of days ago, and as a result, we see Camacho as a big favorite, -360. And then we see a couple more favorites over the 200 mark. Bobby Green, -250. Roosevelt Roberts, -240. And Brianna Van Buren, -230. So some decent-sized favorites on the slate. Now, we've been looking at line moves since most of these fights opened in the betting markets earlier this week. And if we look at the biggest line moves, we see the biggest one for the main event, Curtis Blaydes, 157-cent move in his favor on the money line. Yeah, you're reading that correctly. Just a massive move in his favor. 3 or 4 other with relatively significant moves. Rockwell Pennington, 30-cent move. Max, not even going to try to pronounce his last name, 30-cent move basically in his favor. Mark Andre and Lyman Good, both 20-cent moves in their favor. So some pretty decent moves. And we'll continue to monitor this throughout the course of the afternoon, because as fight day is here, fight night is here, the limits for these matchups go up at sportsbooks, and we'll see a little bit more movement throughout the course of the day. So be sure to keep checking back. The link for this, by the way, for the Occupy model is in the description below. You can also access it at occupyfantasy.com. All right, let's go back to sorting by OF Index. That is our proprietary metric that ranks every fighter on the slate. And I think what we should talk about first is this 5-round fight. Curtis Blaydes, Alexander Volkov. And as we said, Blaydes, massive favorite. You'll see here 75% KO percentage, finish percentage, whatever you want to call it. 75% chance, according to the betting markets, that Blaydes finishes this fight and does not go to distance. That's pretty damn good. Main event fighters, because they are fighting 5 rounds, you see the 5-round check mark here, always get a boost in ownership because of the opportunity to accumulate more stats. And Blaydes, even though he's the most expensive on the slate, as the biggest favorite in a 5-round fight with huge knockout or finish potential, should be probably the most popular fighter on the slate. Maybe second, but extremely popular. Now, Volkov still ranks in the top half of our model. And so what this generally tells us, when we have 2 fighters from the same fight in the top half of the model, it means that we want exposure to this fight. Whoever wins is likely going to be in the top lineup. And Volkov, although only a +318 chance to win, if he does win, our metrics show that he's probably going to end up a top 6 scorer on the slate, especially at his price tag, and especially on DraftKings at just $6,800. A little bit pricier on FanDuel at $16. But again, the way this fight's going to play out, you'll want exposure to both fighters. And even if you're making multiple lineups, let's say you make 5 lineups, maybe you go even with what the money line odds are. So you go 4 out of 5 lineups with Blaydes, 1 out of 5 lineups with Volkov. That way, you still have exposure to both sides of the fight. And this is a fight, I think, that unless you're making 150 lineups, if you're making 20 lineups or less, you'll want one of these 2 fighters in your lineup. All right, so that does it for the 5-round fight. The other really popular fighter on this slate is going to be Frank Camacho. And mentioned it earlier, he's fighting a replacement fighter. As a result, he's now the second biggest favorite on the slate at just $8K on DraftKings, $16 on FanDuel. And it's inevitable at this point. Every single slate, we get a replacement fighter. Camacho was the beneficiary this time. And as a result, we're going to see him just stupidly popular owned. 50% or more, maybe 60, 70%. Because of his price tag, his likelihood to win, and the fact that Justin James had to shed like 20 pounds in like 2 days and has been drinking beer and fishing, preparing for a fight that he wasn't even scheduled for. So pretty tough road ahead for Justin James. And so Camacho is going to be extremely popular. Just realize that a vast majority of lineups are going to start with Blaydes and Camacho. You're automatically boxed into one type of lineup construction there. So you have to think about, if you're playing the large field contest on either FanDuel or DraftKings, how you get different. Okay, people always like to ask us, what are the fantasy-friendly fights we want exposure to? Probably both sides if we can. And when we say this, if you're new to MMA DFS, we don't mean both fighters in the same lineup. You don't want to stack a fight. What we mean is you want at least one of those fighters in all of your lineups. So for instance, the Blaydes Volkov fight, if you make 10 lineups, you want at least one of those guys in all 10 lineups, but never both of them in the same lineup. Hope that makes sense. Okay, aside from the Blaydes fight, the other one that looks really good, according to our model, is this Gillian Robertson Courtney Casey fight. So Robertson, despite just being a -118 favorite, is actually the third highest in the model. 35% KO percentage, that's decent. And Courtney Casey, 30% KO percent chance, that's decent as well. Small favorite, both in the top half of the model. Looking at the back end of some of the metrics, the takedown numbers here, the volume should be pretty high for both fighters. And we recommend getting some exposure to both of these fighters. Again, our model prefers Robertson. If you have another set of projections, if you have a lean one way or the other, if you've been hashtag grinding the tape and you like Casey more, that's fine. But we think that you should get exposure to both of these fighters in a vast majority of your lineups. Another one that I think will be controversial is this Roosevelt Roberts fight. Roberts, 44% KO percent chance, decent chance of submission against Jim Miller, the wily vet. Miller actually ranks in the top half of our model too as a +185 underdog. And just reading some articles out there, some fight predictions, it doesn't sound like most people will be on Jim Miller. And we have to be careful here about Jim Miller's resume. The model takes into account fighters' complete history, so maybe some earlier fights there are impacting his upside in a positive way. So take it with a grain of salt, but still, we like Jim Miller in the event of an upset, especially at 7K. You know, there aren't a ton of fighters in the top half of the model, and especially in this price range that we think can get up to 80, 90, 100 DraftKings points. Our model thinks Miller can do that in the event of a win, so something to keep in mind. Still like Roberts a lot more, but he will be a pretty popular fighter in that 9K and up range. Probably the second most popular 9K fighter after Blaydes. One more. I think it's a question. We see, we've gotten this question in our Discord channel over the last couple of days since the model has been out. If you're not a member of our Discord, you can do so by becoming a subscriber to our Twitch channel. You can do it for free with Amazon Prime. Get access, chat it up with everyone in there about the various DFS topics. It's this Shane Burgos and Josh Emmett fight. One of our longtime members, Jake the Snake, asked me this morning, why is Emmett so low? Emmett, according to, if he runs any type of ownership projections yourself, if you look at the common factors for ownership projections, it's money line, knockout percent chance, salary. Those three are the biggest things. And you'll see here, let me scroll down actually so you can see this on the video. But Josh Emmett, 38% knockout or finish percent, easily the highest in the bottom half of the model, especially in his price range. It's really good. So he'll be a popular underdog, a 7,500, just a +130 favorite. However, just looking at the metrics, he's going to need a round one knockout to get this done. And that's very possible it happens, right? Like, that's very, very possible it happens. In fact, that's the most likely round for him to knock out Shane Burgos, according to betting odds. And if that happens, Emmett's easily going to be in the optimal lineup, a top 6 score for sure. But our model takes into account probability of that happening, and he's going to need that to happen. And again, when you think about that, there's like a 80% chance it doesn't happen, and it seems like a good fade spot, at least in the model's eyes, for a high-owned underdog cheap fighter in Josh Emmett. Burgos, meanwhile, probably a good pivot, 8,700. If most people are playing Emmett, most aren't going to play Burgos, and he ranks in the top half of the model. All right, 2 fights to take a look at that you should probably avoid if you're making just a handful of lineups. The first one is this Rockwell-Pennington fight. Both her and her opponent rank in the bottom half of the model. That's generally an indicator that there will be low volume, not a ton of fantasy points unless there is a knockout. And of course, we've seen some knockouts in these quote-unquote low-volume fights in recent slates. But again, we're playing the numbers here. Pennington, just 22% knockout chance. Her opponent, Renault, 22% knockout chance or finish percent. Not great. The other one that is interesting is this fight. Again, not going to try to pronounce names, but Oscar and Marc Andre. We'll go with the first names here. Both in the bottom half of the model. In the event that this goes to a decision, neither one's going to be in the optimal lineup, a top 6 score, just based on volume. However, you'll note, if I scroll down a little bit here, you'll see Oscar 39% finish percent, Marc Andre 36%. So, roughly, not accounting for the juice, 75% chance of a finish for either fighter. That's pretty good. Now, they're going to need a first or second round knockout. The third round knockout may not even get them there. So while this fight has high KO potential, it's very low volume. So we'll definitely 100% need a knockout for one of these fighters. So keep that in mind if you're using either one in any of your lineups. All right, I hope this was helpful. Try to break down the slate in a little more detail in this video. And again, we're taking all your questions live today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, twitch.tv/OccupyFantasy. Be sure to join us there. Go follow us. That way you're notified when we go live, just in case you don't set an alarm for 3:30. And what else we got? Occupy Model, occupyfantasy.com. What you see on screen here. If you just go to the Occupy Model menu link, you'll see MMA. Again, fully free until a major North American team sport returns. Encourage you to check that out. We also have the PGA model up and League of Legends daily plug, which is a write-up for every League of Legends slate for the LPL and LCK. So go check that out. All right, one final request. Again, subscribe below if you really like this video and you want to get notified when we make more of these. We're doing PGA, MMA, maybe may do some League of Legends stuff here soon. And then once major sports return, we'll have a ton more videos. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And any questions you have about this slate, anything in DFS in general, comment below, and I'll personally get back to you today. So appreciate you listening. Thanks a lot. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.